Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
The words of Jesus we've just heard make up the first third of his teaching about our attitude to money and possessions, our stuff. Now, I sometimes think our family's not bad when it comes to this topic. Although whenever I need to find something in the loft where I am now, well, it's a whole different matter. Just look at all of this stuff. Vinyl, CDs, football memorabilia. Lots of football memorabilia. I suspect many of our lofts or garages would look the same. And not surprisingly, Jesus had something to say about it all. And now that we've got the context, let's hear those words again.
Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Of course, a little bit of this is common sense. It doesn't take a genius to work out that buying something that will last is better than investing in something that won't. Jesus, though, is calling out the Pharisees with all of their wealth, but on the other hand, he's also trying to speak to a bunch of people on the side of a hill who might never even consider themselves rich enough to have treasures. His first challenge is for us not to place value on things that moths can destroy. This one's about clothing. And because, of course, there are such different qualities of clothing, think, I don't know, Primark versus Versace, it was also a great leveller. I mean, everyone, after all, needs clothes. And one of the greatest obstacles of the day in making them last was the moth, who didn't distinguish over the quality of the cloth. Everyone, even today, probably has their best item of clothing or items of clothing that cost more, maybe a lot more than others. And it was true back then, it was the same then, especially for those who had money. So he talks about moths, and then Jesus talks about things that rust can destroy. Now, the Greek word translated rust here is brosis. It literally means an eating away, and actually nowhere else in the Bible do we see it translated as rust. So what's probably being spoken about here is not the rusting of precious metals, but about the eating away of food, corn or grain. So many times in the Bible we hear about people storing up grain, don't we? From the story of Joseph way back in Genesis, right through to some of Jesus's parables. It's a common theme, it comes up again and again. But if rats or mice or worms got in, these grain mountains, or even just a small pile of grain, could quickly be destroyed. Now, we might not relate to that so well, but again, whether Pharisee or ordinary Jewish family, this would have resonated. Thirdly then, Jesus talks about treasures that might be lost to the thieves who break in and steal. Now again, it's worth going back to the original translation, where break in can more literally be described as dig through. After all, walls weren't then quite what they are today, and you certainly couldn't put your things in a safe. But let's face it, even if you did, as part of a family that was burgled last year, things are always less safe than we might think. Can you see now why Jesus' words make sense? With all that in mind, why build your treasures on earth rather than in heaven? He's calling us once again to live differently. He's saying to us, invest in the eternal because it lasts. Treasure in heaven. Anything you place in God's care, it's not subject to loss or theft or being destroyed, eaten away. It's in the safest of hands. So why would you place your life and all that you value anywhere else? Also invest in the eternal because you simply won't find anything better anywhere else. Now, Jesus is not saying that earthly things aren't good. There are plenty of things that are. Instead, he's saying, follow me, and you'll always be surprised as to how much my way of doing things will lead to greater contentment and greater fulfillment. That's why people who chase money and possessions always end up chasing more, because they're working on an earthly economy where they can never get enough, not a heavenly one. To take the line of one of my favourite songs, lay down what's good and find what's best. So, invest in the eternal because it lasts. Invest in the eternal because you won't find anything better. And then finally, Jesus says, invest in the eternal because it will make today better as well as tomorrow. This bit's so important, but it often gets missed. Jesus is reminding us that earthly treasure will inevitably lead us astray. It will make us wander. It will take us onto the wrong paths as we try and follow him. Chasing stuff focuses on that rather than on God. That's what he meant when he said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We have to be honest here. As we look around all the stuff that we have and all that we do with our money, our talents, our time, it's always a good indicator of what we value, where our heart is. And let's be honest, it's not always pretty. So, invest in the eternal and build happiness and contentment that will last, that in the kingdom of heaven is the best that can be found, and that will help you live better today as well as for tomorrow. Living for eternity is not always the easiest thing to get our heads around. You might remember that Jesus' closest followers struggled with it, so we'd certainly be excused. And of course, Jesus never ever said that this world wasn't important. But he did say, again and again and again, that the importance of this world is not found in itself, but in what it leads to. This world is not the end of life. It's simply a stage on the way. And if we truly believe that, then why would we need all this stuff? Instead, we're called to set our eyes on something that's further ahead.